Hello, gents, ladies, and gentlemen. I'm Frank Cooper,
Tristan Jones.
And I'm Naomi.
I'm Marcela Gonzalez.
and we are the Watchers in the Basement. Happy Thursday, guys and ladies. We are here today. I know normally we give one episode a week, but right now, fall season is here. A lot of shows are coming out. And today we are going to talk about the season premiere, season 5 of Yellowstone. So we was graced enough to have 2 episodes drop Sunday, episode 1 and 2, to commemorate the season. And we're going to talk about that, me and my 3 compadres. So please dig in and let's get it. So season 4, a lot happened. So to do a quick recap, guys and gals. So Summer Higgins, environmentalist, got arrested and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Rip and Beth get married. Casey struggles with his past and goes to a shaman to try to clear his sins, and finds a vision that him and Monica are going to break up. So he says. Jamie gets blackmailed for killing his father, gets videotaped and pictured by Beth as blackmail to make sure he is on the straight and narrow for this season as Jamie's father becomes a governor. His John Dutton, not the guy that he killed last season. Monica's pregnant, that we find out in the season, I think the season finale, the episode before season finale. Rip and Beth kind of adopt somebody, a young kid by the name of Carter. And Jimmy becomes a cowboy, goes to Texas, gets married, and leaves the show. He's going to be in a new spinoff called 666, a Yellowstone spinoff. So that is a quick recap of season 4. So in episode 1, we find out that Jamie, who's the attorney general, we think that he's gonna run for governor, only for Linnell who was the senator of Montana, to name John as a candidate for the governor's seat in Montana. So that's what episode 1 picks up and takes off. So guys and gals, man, tell me about episode 1, starting with Naomi. What did you think of episode 1 of the new season?
So I honestly thought that, it was, of course, it's going to have to come in with a bang, and it kind of reminded me of the very first season where it's just John, at the scene of the crash or whatever. And so with it starting off kind of like that, I was just like, oh man, we're in for it. So it just kind of brought back season 1 for me a little bit. But I was expecting, after that, I was kind of expecting, I don't know, maybe I was just expecting a little more of like the ending of season 4 for there to be more explanations. But again, with Yellowstone, it's going to kind of slowly throughout the episodes and throughout the season, bring it back and then go forward and back. But I really did enjoy it. I've already watched it like 4 or 5 times. Which I want to take credit for putting Frank onto this show because he had no idea about it like 2 years ago. I remember the very first episode I showed him and he saw the branding and he's like, what kind of show is this? And you remember that?
I do. One thing I do remember, before you showed me an episode, you showed me a scene in season 1 where Beth was kidnapped.
Oh, yeah.
And Rick came in and just started breaking dudes off. And I was like, bro, I don't know who this character is, but he might be my favorite character. This is before even watching an episode of Yellowstone. So I gotta thank you for putting me on this. And I told Tristan about it, and from there on, now we all Yellowstone hooked now. So
I know I've been a Kevin Costner fan since I was like 12, I think, watching movies I shouldn't have been watching at 12, but I've been a Kevin Costner fan for a long time. So, I mean, I did watching it and kind of getting into it at the beginning, like the first, episode is kind of slow. So I guess in a sense, this season starting off, I feel like it started off just a little slow for me, just from all the other seasons and things of that sort. But I when it started ending for episode 2, that's when I'm like, okay, they're going to take us on a wild ride this season. Like I could just feel it with bringing in the new person. What's her name? Kind of like a Beth, on the opposite side, to kind of have someone match her, because really there's no one on the show that really matches her.
I believe her name is Sarah Atwood.
Yeah, Sarah Atwood. So I don't think there has been anybody to really match her. And just throughout the show, it's just showing you how she deals with men and women and just anybody. So it'll be interesting to see how she comes in and kind of ruffles Beth's feathers. I think it'll happen.
I can't wait. Marcy, tell me your thoughts about season 5, episode 1.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it did go a little bit slower than I anticipated. But it was just so evident that nobody was happy. Like everybody's supposed to be excited. John won. He's governor now, but he's like not happy about it. He's very reluctant to be the governor. Rainwater and Mo aren't happy about it because they know what that's going to mean for their casinos and everything. Rip's not happy about it either when they're having that party at the ranch. And I think he just knows that not a lot of good can probably come of John being the governor, and he knows that progress is still going to come and it's going to happen, and no matter like how hard Beth and John work, like things are still going to have to change. So I think that was really good. And yeah, I was expecting a little bit more, but again, like once we got into episode 2, I was like, okay, like we're in for a lot of stuff this season.
Absolutely. T-Money, man, give me your thoughts.
My thoughts are really in line with Naomi and Marcy. Like, it was slow. The first episode was a little slow. I like it's kind of reintroducing the storylines from season 4. But what I also noticed that the show is doing is transitioning us away from a lot of the smaller conflicts that populate at least the first 3 seasons. The conflict starts to broaden out a lot more in season 4. And that's just the way that the show is going. Like, I don't think we're ever getting back to like these small, like land disputes. Like the land disputes are much bigger now, right? With market equities and such. But episode 2, I thought was a lot more faster paced. And like you said, like by the time we get to the end of episode 2, okay, shit is about to go down. I very much like the flashbacks. I really hope we talk a little bit about the flashbacks, but I hope to see more because while we know that Beth and Rip have a complicated relationship that had been going on, it's important to see like how long this complicated relationship has been going on and how long she's been treating Rip the way she treats him, especially when they first meet up again in season 1. It's good to have that context. So I very much like that. And I'm glad the show kind of slowed down a little bit to give us that needed context. So I very much like the first 2 episodes. Excited for the rest of the season.
No, and I also, if I can jump in, I loved how they used the guy that plays Lloyd, his actual son, to play his younger self, because they look so much alike. So at first I was like, oh my gosh, they got like they did really great casting.
That's what I thought too.
His actual son. Yeah, I was like, wow, they hit it out of the park with this casting. But then I read that it's his actual son. So I loved also seeing the flashbacks, and also Tristan, to your point about just some of maybe like the smaller struggles becoming bigger. And I think it's also becoming more internal struggles as well, with Beth kind of her internal struggles, and kind of again like her with the flashbacks, just feeling bad about how she had treated Rip, and John's got a lot of internal struggles. And I think we're going to see Casey a lot too, because of his vision that he had, and he said it was the end of us. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Absolutely. Great takes, guys. Great takes.
Yeah, because one of the things is I haven't seen Casey, like him as a teenager or anything like that. So I'm kind of interested to see if we get to see any of Casey's like flashbacks.
Yeah, I think the only flashback we saw of Casey as was a kid when their mother died.
Yeah.
That was season 2 when they so it'll be very interesting to see how his childhood was growing up, especially after losing your mother. So
yeah.
But to go back to episode 1, so the episode opens up with John pretty much knowing that he gets a call from Scott, the guy that he was running against to become governor, gets the call, pretty much telling him congrats, the future's with you, and I have your support. There was a line that John said at the podium when he won. He says, "I fight for what's right. I don't care who supports it." And that's very interesting to me, because in politics you need support, especially to push agendas. So for him to say that, I feel like you're counteracting your whole position as being governor, because it's only saving. I mean, I know you don't care about nothing but saving your ranch, and I get that. But in order to get these policies pushed through and these things canceled, and you need the support of the people, and especially support of people in political office in Montana. So what did you guys think about that line? I'll start with you, Tristan.
So, I mean, I thought it was a very loaded line. I think there's a conflict between who John is at his core, just as a man, as a leader, as this old relic of old Montana, with what like his new responsibilities as governor. And one thing we know about John Dutton, he's really intractable. Like that's what makes John is. He is the immovable object. And being a politician, which is what he is, I know he's using it as his vehicle to save his ranch. And I think he does genuinely care about Montana and the perception of Montana, especially by outsiders, and like the viability of Montana as this conservative, old-fashioned, just relic of America, of nature, whatever. But it's interesting because we're seeing the conflict that's going to be set up of, hey, you have to learn how to be less intractable and less you, and that's what makes him him. But he can't. It's impossible for him to accomplish the things he wants to accomplish. One being, eliminating these threats to his land and to his ranch without reaching across, not just the aisle, but just reaching across to different entities, different political entities, and making compromises. When have we seen John Dutton compromise? The only person he concedes anything to is his daughter. And that's it. Like maybe Casey once or twice, but like he's not a conceding type of guy. So I thought it was funny. Like you said, like I care about what's right. I don't care who supports it. And he's going to have to change that tone. Like what's right and who supports it, like that, there's a thin line between those two things. Like if nobody supports it, and guess what? It's probably not right. Right. Or it doesn't matter if it's right or not. If it can't be supported enough to get pushed through, then it's not going to happen. So we're seeing like he's going to have to be in conflict with himself and who he truly is. And I think that's a very interesting subplot, especially this late into the show. Like we've seen him be John Dutton, like in all caps, John Dutton for so long. And part of his new position is going to lower him a little bit in order to make him bigger in the long run.
I think too, like him becoming governor was, to put it quite simply, a brash response of how he felt when Jamie portrayed him initially. And I think he didn't give it much thought of like the weighted responsibility is going to take to become governor. He made it about the ranch, which is fine, but like you have to understand that the ranch is just a minute part of being governor. and I think it didn't hit John until the inauguration when he was being sworn in.
And he stayed quiet and couldn't, say anything until he was like, and I feel like a little bit, sorry to jump in, but I feel like in that moment when he paused, I think he was still kind of talking to himself internally and saying, is this what I really want to do? And he needed Beth to nudge him because Beth is the one who's always telling him, this is what's going to happen if you don't do what I say, kind of thing. But I think too, with John, he has, we have to remember that he got elected for a reason, because there's a lot of people who think like him in some aspect, especially, from ending the season 4 and what he said when he, announced that he was going to run. And so it's been his campaign, like, what's the older lady's name? had said when Sarah Atwood came in. She's like, that's the campaign he's been running with, you know, like he's going to shut all this stuff down. And I think John is struggling with, because we have to remember he's what, in his 60s, right? So it goes back to the days where he grew up where their word was everything, you know? And so if they gave their word on something, so he's still kind of struggling with that, you know, moving forward, knowing that, you know, with corporate greed and all of that, your word means nothing anymore. You know, it's kind of washed away. So I think he's really just struggling with that too.
Absolutely. Marcy, what were your thoughts with that
Yeah.
opening?
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of made me think of the last few episodes of episode 4 or season 4, whenever he's kind of going back and forth and arguing with the judge about should Summer like get all this time in prison, and he's like, yes, like it may be just according to the law based on like her crimes and her previous crimes and everything, but it's not right to do this to her because she was just trying to bring awareness to an issue. So it just kind of reminded me of that. And then it was great when Linnell was like, hey, like it's great that like you have these ideas of what you want to do as governor, and like if you only want to do this for one term, like you may have an easier time because you don't have to try to get reelected or anything, but you still need support. So kind of like wake up and just kind of again like work with people a little bit more, so that they're able to support you in your initiatives and you don't end up actually losing your ranch in the process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another thing I want to talk about too is in that scene where John's making his speech after winning the role of governor for the states. The sneering between Jamie and Beth on stage. And I want to preface by saying this too, because I gave this a lot of thought, because I went back and watched a little bit of season 2 as well. And I know I'm going to be in the minority when saying this, but I have a lot of sympathy for Jamie from this standpoint. All the kids, the Dutton kids, Casey, Beth, Jamie, they're all fucked up. They're all fucked up, and largely because of John. And I think for a child to believe that you're part of this family as a Dutton for 40 years of your life, and to get a slap in the face saying that, oh, by the way, John's not your dad. Oh, by the way, your biological father was in prison. Oh, and by the way, your father killed your biological mother. That's a lot for anybody to handle, right? And when you look at the childhoods of Casey and Beth, Casey went to war to find refuge and peace from the ranch. Let that sink in. Casey left the ranch to go to war because he found more peace overseas than in his own home. And and even with Beth, like the struggles that she went through as being the only woman in the household outside of her mother, and how her mother treated her, want her, make her tougher. When I see all that and I encompass all of that, I'm not condoning all the decisions that Jamie's made. I get it. Especially, what he did with Beth in the flashback of, giving her a hysterectomy and things of that nature. But the psychological damage that Jamie has, he gives me a lot of Theon. I get a lot of Theon Greyjoy from him, the identity crisis. And even momentarily getting a father's love from the guy that he didn't know was his dad in the first place, even for a season of a quick 15 minutes, it showed me how much he longed for that fatherly attention. So in a way, I do feel bad for Jamie. What are your thoughts on that? Tristan, I'll go with you, Tristan.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for sympathy for all of them. Specifically Jamie, who has had these identity issues. To take it further, like before fully knowing that he wasn't one of them, he always knew he wasn't one of them. Like he's the lawyer guy, he's the the book guy, he's the that's him. Everybody else is the get your hands like really dirty kind of family. So he's been softly ostracized from that family for so long, and that finding out that he's not really a Dutton is just like the final nail in that coffin. But he's still tied to that family in so many ways that are unhealthy. right? So yeah, you should feel sorry for Jamie. Like the reason Beth hates him is a thing that you should not feel sorry for him for. But you also have to remember he was really young when that happened. With the pregnancy and such. Since then, he's tried his best to show his value and loyalty to the Dutton family, but there's so many broken relationships, and I guess he also gets to see, take a step back and see the flaws in his family, in the family structure as well. So it's just so many different things going on with Jamie, that he's trying to be, that he can't really fully be himself. So yeah, I feel sorry for him. Definitely, I feel sorry for all those kids. This is like the anti-succession, where I feel sorry for none of them to a degree, but yeah, I feel sorry for Jamie. Like it's just interesting to see where does he find his backbone? Like where does he do and how does he find that backbone? How does he maneuver that backbone? Beth is never going to turn him in to the police. I don't think that's in her nature, but I feel a lot of sympathy for him because it's the abuse he takes from Beth for so long that it's almost cartoonish at this point.
I do too.
Geez, man, it's some of the harshest rhetoric and dialogue that we see on TV. I thought the dialogue between the Roy kids was bad, but this is man, it's hellish. So yeah, definitely feel sorry for Jamie.
I definitely think they all need therapy for sure. But I think Jamie needs a better poker face because the way he was looking on stage, that's how Caroline was like, oh, he looks unhappy. We've got to bring Sarah in to see how we can get him on our side. But I mean, if you think about it, he killed his biological father for the family. So we have to wonder, did he do it just for the family or just to not get in trouble? I don't think it was just because he didn't want to get in trouble or have Beth turn him in. I really do think it's because of his loyalty to the family, especially John. And I do agree. I do feel sympathy for him. Obviously, what he did with Beth was just, was awful. But again, they were very young. So when you're that young, you don't really comprehend what's going to happen after you make decisions and you take actions. But again, I think it would be different if we never got a sense of remorse from Jamie. But I don't think Jamie felt good about what happened to Beth. And I really do think that he felt bad about it and he felt remorseful. So it is kind of difficult when you're watching Beth be so cruel, even though it's justified. You see him take a beating and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I think both things can be true. I think Beth has a right to feel like something was stolen from her because it was. And it could also be true that Jamie was young and he thought he was doing what was best for Beth and for the family at that time. So, Naomi, what are your thoughts on Jamie's character arc so far? You're muted, Naomi. Wait, we can't hear you. We'll come back to you. I think you're having audio issues. But yes, so Sarah, so back to the market equities camp. Caroline Weaver is upset. She's livid. John's now governor, and Caroline's, I guess, assistant kind of notices Jamie being really unhappy on stage, and they call in the big guns and Sarah Atwood. I love this actress. I don't know her name by heart, but she was in House of Lies. She played Don Cheadle's ex-wife in that show. She was also in Lucifer. She's a great actress, and she plays these very bitchy, very cunning characters. So I can't wait to see what she's gonna bring to the table. And like Naomi mentioned earlier, it's set up to be that she might be the Beth for the other side. Very cunning, very cruel, very articulate in nature. So, Tristan, what do you think Sarah Atwood might bring to the table for this season for market?
I mean, yeah, I think it's really clear. She's a foil to Beth Dutton. They get excited about the same shit. So it's side note, man. That marketed Carolyn Weaver, man, her voice fucking annoys me, man. Like, jeez. But I'm very. I want to see. I definitely want to see the showdown between Sarah Atwood and Beth. Like that. I feel like that's going to be one of the highlights of the season. Just like this, the rhetoric, the dialogue between them back and forth. Like I want to see how low and how far will Beth go to beat them. And I've been waiting for that honestly since last season. Like it kind of came to a head, but not really. Like now it's definitely coming to a head with John in so much power, with Beth right there as chief of staff. Like I really want to see like this heavyweight battle. Forget John and Carolyn, like it's Beth and Sarah. Like that's going to be one of the best. Not necessarily a mini subplot, but like it's going to be one of the major subplots of this season. So I can't wait to see it.
Marcy, what are your thoughts of Miss Sarah Atwood potentially breaking some backs and creating some havoc this season?
She's going to be our brunette Beth. But just when I saw her come in, I was like, holy shit, we're in for like a crazy season. And I'm like, I'm already kind of tired of it. I'm like, I know it's going to be intense. So I'm like gearing myself up about it. But I also love Caroline. I love that actress too. So it'll be interesting to see like how she also factors into it. I mean, I think like she's what they would like ultimately become, right? Like Beth and Sarah, like you become like the Caroline. So it'll be really interesting to watch.
Absolutely. Not far after that scene, we get a flashback. And I love this flashback because I think it kind of puts in context of like how Beth was towards Rip throughout this whole time. But we get a flashback. There might have been 14 or 15. Beth's on the ranch. She invites Rip out to a date, and throughout the whole time, Beth is just offered to Rip, using big words, not explaining things, trying to make him feel stupid, using her assets at the bar to get drinks and things of that nature. What and Nomi, is your audio back on? Can you hear us? You still have issues. Okay. Tristan, what were your thoughts with that flashback? And do you think that plays a part of what's to come between them in the future, between Rip and Beth?
Absolutely. I think so. I thought a lot about that scene in the lead up to this pod, but like, I think what's being set up from last season is the softening of Beth Dutton a little bit, if possible. It starts with man, I just forgot the boy. What's the boy's name? Starts with a C.
Carter.
So yeah, it starts. Bringing in Carter, and you see Rip a little bit kind of soften up a little bit. Like he's starting to see the kind of influence that he can have on Carter. The thing with Rip is he only knows one way to be, which is just all out ass. That's the only way he knows. Like he grew up, basically an orphan, no parents, and then he goes to this hyper masculine environment where it's eat or be eaten. You know what I'm saying? So that's all he knows. So he's trying to learn how to love in this different way. And we can see that Rip clearly knows how to show love, right? He shows love to John Dutton from the start in his own way. He's wonderful with Beth, having no formal training on, being a husband or being, a committed man in a relationship. So he starts to, piece by piece, like layers are being peeled off of him when it comes to Carter. And with Beth, we see the same thing. Like she tries to show Carter love in a particular way. And she's also trying to show him how to be a man in her own way, where Rip is kind of on the opposite side. And it's like they're both, peeling off these layers of themselves and also trying to construct Carter in a way, in a loving way. Like, but they're both learning on the job, basically. So I think hopefully we see more of these flashbacks of how her and Rip's relationship developed. And I hope it crescendos at the end to them like coming together and kind of breaking away from the toxic ways that they've been shown love. Beth being, dealing with, mother dying, and the contentious relationship she's had with Jamie, to the kind of on again, off again relationship that she has with Casey, to this subservient relationship that she has with her dad. Whereas she's the only person that he can kind of be vulnerable with. It's just so much stuff going on with them learning how to love in general, and learning how to show love to each other, that, hopefully, like I said, hopefully it ends with them just with like this newfound way of just learning how to treat and engage with other people, because it's just been contentious for them their entire lives. And I think that's what that flashback was showing, was just that Beth has been so broken for so long that it's going to take like this long, really decades long journey to get her just to be, a regular, loving, like, human being. And I think hopefully that's where this ends up.
Naomi, what are your thoughts about the flashback you saw with Beth and Rip, and what it might mean for the future of this season regarding those two? We still can't hear you. Okay, Marcy, what about you?
I'm about the same age as the character of Beth, so this kind of made me start thinking about, wow, dating as a teenager is like difficult enough, but she was kind of out there. She's kind of crazy. But it did get me a little bit of my feelings. I remember just being a teenage girl and just starting to date and liking a guy and maybe like having a boyfriend, but just kind of being nonchalant or even kind of mean like Beth was. So I did feel a little bit bad about that. That put me in my feelings, but I'm glad that she was able to be vulnerable and say like, Rip, I am so sorry for the way that I treated you. So it kind of made me want to reach out to old boyfriends maybe that I wasn't so nice to, but that would be a little bit psycho at this point, 20 plus years later. So it was just really nice again to see them, to see that flashback, and to see, I just love the way Rip is with Beth, because he, on one hand, he can like kill people for the Duttons and for the family and for the ranch, but then he's like so loving with Beth. But what kind of worries me is that when they got married, like he gave her his mom's ring, which is like sweet on one hand, but also I felt like it could be a bad omen because like his dad killed his mom. So I don't know. I'm all about symbolism. So I was like, I don't know if I'd want to give my new wife the ring that belonged to my mom, who was murdered by my dad. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of what plays out this season for them.
I think for me, for that scene, I learned more about Rip than I did Beth. Rip is really forgiving. I mean, if you remember in season 1, the first episode of season 1, Beth comes back from Utah, comes back to the ranch, and they have this aggressive sex scene. And afterwards, right after they're done, she calls him a bitch or whatever, and she walks out. I think he asked to go on a date with her, goes, watch the wolves kill a carcass or something, or eat a carcass or whatever. So I think seeing that scene really showed me really how forgiving Rip is, more than he leads on. And I've also regarding Carter, I'm really surprised how slow Rip is to accepting Carter. I mean, you see remnants of it. He's opened up a little bit, with the selling of the horse and them going out on a ride together. But when you look at Carter's Rip. Like he's like he lost his parents, he lost his dad, to an overdose or whatever. I mean, even though the traumas are different, they still experience loss at a young age. And I thought Rip could like have that in common with him and kind of like tutor him in a way and navigate him through life. I mean, I'm not saying Rip is a teacher by no stretch of imagination, but
that's why he is so hard on him, is because he's him. And that's the type of education it seems that Rip got, right? From not just the ranch hands, John to a degree. I don't think John was like cruel.
I don't think John was that cruel though.
Yeah, I don't think John was cruel to him, but it was this tough, no nonsense. You don't even really have that much leeway to be a kid, and make those kids mistakes. What Rip learned at a young age since he's been on the ranch is that this shit is serious. Like, this is life or death. Like, there's a lot of money involved in this, a lot of, reputation, multi-generational family shit. Like, this is what he's learned. And Rip has carried the weight of the ranch for so long. Like, this is like life. He's like Klay Thompson. Like, I love being a warrior. Like, this is him. Like, this is his life. This is his whole life. So it's not just like a job he's trying to teach Carter to be good at. This is like our way of life. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's these larger tropes about, hey, this is how we feed ourselves, how we feed families, how we keep this thing going. And Carter is not just some innocent bystander to like these wars and battles that are going on about the ranch. Like, he's an active participant now. And I feel like Rip feels like he has to get him ready for like the main meat of these conflicts that are going on. So that's why he's so hard on him, because he's him. And, there's a lot of self-loathing with Rip, right? I think Rip doesn't reciprocate that towards like the people closest to him, like John and Beth, but there's a lot of self-loathing of what he's not. And he sees that in Carter. And I don't think he knows how to reverse that type of instruction, that type of mentorship, I guess you can call it.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Tristan, because even with Lloyd last season, a lot of fans were outraged with the treatment that Rip had with Lloyd when Lloyd was beefing with, I can't remember the guy's name, but when he was beefing with him and the issues that they had, and Rip was very, very rough on Lloyd. And it seems to me that the fun thing with Rip is the closer he is with people, not named John, the closer he is with people, the more aggressive he can be, especially with the male people in his life, like Lloyd and a lot of the ranch hands that he grew up with on that ranch. Naomi, what were your thoughts with that flashback? I'm not sure if you signed back on.
Yeah, she said she probably got to log off.
Okay, that's cool. We'll have you back on the next episode, I promise. Thank you so much. But yeah, I find Rip is the most intriguing character to me because of how he shows love and a loyalty. Loyalty is not always synonymous with love with Rip. Like, Rip can be loyal to you and treat you like shit, but in his own way he cares about you. And even with the ranch hands, you see how he has his back. Like, there was a scene where in episode 2 with the wolves, the collared wolves, gets called 3:30 in the morning. Rip's up and about, and he's ready to take care of what they need to take care of because Rip cares about the people on the ranch and he'll do anything for them. So I think the loyalty he has with them is not always synonymous with the love that he has for them, if that makes sense. To fast forward a little bit, so the swearing in, I know we talked about a little bit earlier about John hesitating, but John said a quote that I want to talk about when speaking to the public. He says, "I'm not a politician. This was not my plan. My only plan was to preserve my family's way of life. I feel that you voted for a man who doesn't want this job to lead the state means that we share the same goals." That really caught my attention because vulnerably he's saying, my priority is my family's legacy, my ranch. That's my priority. Now, if your way of life somewhat symbolizes my way of life, then cool, I got you. Other than that, if it doesn't align with my vision for the protection of my family, my ranch, then fuck you. That's pretty much what I got out of that. Marcy, what was your thoughts about that speech at the press conference?
Well, I think that whole speech was interesting, starting from when Jamie was introducing them, because he goes on about how John's family has been there for over 100 years before Montana was a state, and how Linnell is also fifth generation Montanan. But then, like, you also think about, well, there were people in what is now Montana for a lot longer than the Duttons had ever been there. Right. So we don't know like what is going to happen to them as well. So it's just very interesting to me to just kind of be like, okay, like, yes, you do have some claim to Montana because your family has been here for generations, but so has this other group of people. Like, how do your actions of you trying to save your land and your ranch like impact what they're trying to do and what they're trying to build? So I think it was just a really interesting speech overall, but it also kind of like makes me think of like politicians that we have in real life now. We have a lot of people that are like, I'm not a politician. I got in this to either like make this right, or I see like I want to protect family values, or I want to protect some of these other things. So it's just really interesting how that is kind of a mirror to what we see now, with a lot of people getting into politics and saying that they're not politicians, and again learning how to um, play the game essentially, and learning that yes, you might have your ideals that you come in with, but if you don't play the game, then you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, that's a amazing point, because I think the show is using John Dutton as a symbol for the modern politician, right? Like the politician that is not formally trained, not somebody who's come up through the ranks of being in politics, somebody who is how can I say, too honest, and using like this individualism of like my ranch, my family, like that definitely resonates with a lot of people that he's talking to. And what we also see with John is the constituency that he has is much larger than the constituency that he's talking to in that speech. He's talking to a specific group of people, and you see the buzzwords like our way of life, New York, LA, coast. Like, he's trying to draw a clear distinction between this very conservative, very limited, small bubble Montana and this progress. Like, what's so crazy to me is how progress, both on this show and in real life, with a lot of the politicians that we see, how progress is like this dirty word. Like this progress to where it's seen as like the opposite of the way that things are supposed to go. Like, and that speech just really crystallized how, like, I don't want to say that trumping John Dutton, because I refuse to say that about my GOAT. But he is like being used, like I said, as a reflection of the of modern politicians in real life, in this very limited way that they view politics in their constituencies. And that's definitely going to bite him in his ass, because you can't rally an entire state around your one cause, right? But if you can rile up like this very small population or very small subset of your constituency, then that can carry you towards a lot of, legislative victories, or just being seen as somebody who's getting stuff done, when in actuality, it's a really limited platform that he's running on.
We have Professor 357 make a comment. He says,
shout out to my boy Josue.
Huh?
That's Josue.
Oh, it's Josue? Oh, so Josue? So he makes an interesting point. He says, John pulls at the humanity's most core instincts, our nation's desires to hold on to stability, preserve of life, and family legacy. One thing I find interesting about this show too is that this show does I won't say even a good job, a very interesting job of like making the proverbial white privileged patriarchal character the hero in this story. We get so enamored by the mysterious nature, the brash cowboy nature of one John Dutton, but in this story, if you look at the historical context, and this is going to take me on my next point about Thomas Rainwater. But we looked at historical context, and for those who watched 1883, the Native Americans, this was their land. This was their land. They ate off the land. They thrived on this land, and due to the Western frontier and the exception of Anglo-Saxons, they took over this land. They raped and pillaged. They killed a lot of Native Americans and pretty much put them on reservations. And you see that in Yellowstone in this series too. And parts of me, and Tristan, we had this talk yesterday via text. Parts of me feel guilty. I feel guilty for loving John so much, because of the historical context next to it, and you kind of forget where the historical context comes from when we're dealing with the very natives that the indigenous people that lived on this land. And that goes to my next point, my next question, I should say. And Marcy, I can go to you with this question. When do you think that conversation with Thomas Rainwater will be had between John and him? I feel like with everything that's happened over the last 2 episodes, the pending of the contracts with the casino and the airport funding and the Paradise Valley project. When do you think that conversation will be had with Thomas Rainwater, and where do you think that's going to go between those 2 characters?
Yeah, great question. I think it's going to have to happen soon because they've kind of been in a little bit of a truce for a while, right? Like they were both fighting against like all this outside progress coming in because it was mutually beneficial to Dutton and to Rainwater. But now like Dutton is governor, like how is that going to affect Thomas and the casino and like the way of life for the Native Americans there? So it's going to happen soon because Rainwater, I forget her name. She was in, I think, season 2. But the actress's name, Coriana Kircher. So she comes in and she's like, okay, Thomas, like you kind of had a hand in this because you didn't help stop it. So like now what is that going to mean for us? So it'll be interesting to see what that conversation is like and to see if they do kind of, again, maybe team up to find ways that are going to benefit them both, or if they're again going to be at odds, with John wanting to do one thing to save the ranch and then Thomas wanting to do another thing for his casino and for the progress that he wants for his group of people.
And I just want to see, does John have it? Does he have the political skill to serve this constituency who wants to block all progress while also dealing with Rainwater when they really, you called it a truce, Marcy. Like it seemed like they had like a mini alliance last season. So it's kind of interesting, like the dichotomy between those 2 concepts. Is it a truce? Is it an alliance? It's kind of the same thing, right? The way that they go. What's crazy to me, so you're talking about like the historical context, and Josue's kind of talking about it in the comments, but another thing that shows the link between 1883 and Yellowstone is just this concept of like individualism, right? Because John Dutton's whole fight is about this individualism, my ranch, my family, like this is our land that we want to keep to ourselves. And that reflects really the motivations behind the gold rush, like these excursions to California, just the West in general, is like people just wanted their own stuff. Like they wanted their own land. They wanted all these things to themselves. And it just led to these conflicts, like this conflicts between, white men and the natives, and conflicts between these different groups. And because those things were never resolved, we see it now in Yellowstone, to where John has to, like, there's all these mini conflicts that are just popping up surrounding this land. Everybody wants a piece of this land, right? Everybody wants a piece of this Montana land, which is so vast and has so many opportunities. And again, it's interesting to see, like, can John see these different conflicts before they happen? And can he release himself from so much of his intractability to negotiate and like really make those things happen, not just for like Montana, but obviously for his family. So I'm kind of skeptical at the moment. Like,
it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if he has that in him. I don't know if Beth has that in him. Here's another thing that I really want to see. Who's going to be the one who can push both John and Beth when they're both intractable about a single issue?
It's going to be Jamie.
It has to be Jamie. But can he break through and get them to listen? Right? Can they break through like this family trauma, these family conflicts that have gone on for so long? Because Jamie really is the voice of reason. It's just that he's the wrong messenger for that particular message. So I'm interested in seeing that going forward.
And I think that's the juxtapose of this whole position with Jamie, is that right now he's the least trustworthy, but at the same time he has the foresight to to understand both sides. He knows he wants to do what he can to save his dad's ranch, but at the same time, he knows politics. He went to school for this shit. Like he grew up in this life, and he grew up with the perspective of playing both sides. And I think you saw his cunningness and his political intelligence in episode 1, where they're at City Hall and Lionel, was she Senate? She might be Senate at the time, but somebody is trying to get some of John's land, and Jamie comes in and poetically, as a lawyer, he lays out all the different laws and rules in Montana and eminent domain and things of that nature. And you see the intelligence that he displays. And I think what makes the story so beautiful is that the one person that can possibly save this ranch is going to be the one person that they don't trust. And I can't wait to see where the story goes, and Jamie trying to get back in good graces with the Duttons and so on and so forth. But another thing I want to talk about too is so once he's inaugurated, he gets sworn in. They have a big celebration on the ranch. Everybody's happy. The ranch hands all drinking and open bar, blase blase. We see Rip on the pasture looking down, and he's the one person who looks miserable. Like he's the one person that looks like this could be the end of the ranch. And he says something that's very interesting, is that he thinks that John's gonna lose his ranch now that he's governor. Marcy, what do you think Rip is thinking? Why this might be the beginning of the end of the ranch?
Well, I mean, just if you look back through history, right? You know, the Native Americans were here for a long time. People come in, take their land. It's the cycle. It's eventually going to repeat itself, right? Like the Duttons have been on this land for a long time, and for a long time, Montana, like not a lot of people lived there until more people started going there and liking it and wanting to move there and wanting to build resorts and airports and all of these things there. So I think he kind of sees that, but I think maybe just Rip knows that it's part of the natural order of things. And I'm also interested to just kind of see this season how Beth, being a little bit more away, she'll have to be in Helena with John, since she's the new chief of staff, if that's how that's going to create some conflict between them. So I'm interested to see that. But yeah, I definitely noticed that in the premiere. Rip was just kind of like, yeah, I know what's coming. There's really nothing to celebrate, and I'm just gonna kind of watch them from here.
And so I took that a different way. I viewed it as Rip kind of mourning the loss of John Dutton as ranch head. You know, is like, hey, I'm losing this. Like, I'm losing this central figure that I've depended on for so long, and now I have to step into that mantle. But also, to Marcy's point, he's been next to John for so long. And John, if we go back to season 1, John has been warning of the end of this ranch since the beginning. And Rip has been there and hearing these things. So I think it's been kind of built into his head, like, hell, this is going to end pretty soon. Like, there's just so many challengers to this particular throne that it can't last forever, right? But yeah, originally when I first saw the episode, I see him like kind of grappling with the fact that he's going to have to step into a role that he was never really trained to have, right? John's gone, Beth is gone. Who else is in charge? Like, it's him. Casey's, he's the popo now. Like, so like, who's going to be in charge? It has to be Rip. He's the only one really qualified to be that. And he misses John, but he's also gotten smarter being next to John, kind of by osmosis, is just seeing where the tea leaves are going with that ranch and understanding like just it's not viable barring something major. And it's going to take something major by the end of the season for them to keep that ranch and for it to continue to be, a viable, asset for their family.
That's a really great point, Tristan. Oh, sorry, if I could jump in real quick. I love your point about just him not wanting to just kind of let go of John a little bit, because whenever we see he's sitting at the kitchen and then Beth comes in and they're just kind of talking, she's talking about they're going to have a big day. And he's like, well, it's calving season. Like, when is John going to come back? And she's like, 4 years, maybe 8. And he's like, yeah, but we're in the middle of calving season. So I think he is kind of struggling with like, John has to be governor now, but we have all these other things to do at the ranch. Um, so yeah, and I'm also interested to see, just not interested to see, but when we saw John's horse having to be put down because of that injury, also just maybe kind of some foreshadowing of, again, like John also having to be away from the ranch and just kind of not being there anymore.
That's a good point, Marcy. I think I saw that symbolism as well. The putting out the horse to start of a new chapter, not only for John but for the ranch. And I think Rip has been the muscle for so long for that ranch. I think being the muscle and being the enforcer comes natural to Rip. Like that's who he is. And I think anything more of that, or anything to be asked more of him to be a leader as far as a tactician and be able to lead the ranch, I think he's so afraid of failing, and not just failing, but failing John. If that opportunity comes to arise and he has to be the one to step into John's place and lead the ranch, I think him failing at that job will probably end him mentally, because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to fail John. And like you even see it in last season where he wants to marry Beth, but he was so afraid of doing it because he wanted to make sure that John was okay with it. and you can tell John trusts Rip with his life. So for Rip to still have this childlike innocence of like, I don't want to support the guy that, I mean, wholeheartedly is his dad. I mean, that's what he is to him. And I think taking a potential leadership role and failing at that role could be monumental for Rip, and he doesn't want to fail, especially the guy that gave him a second chance at life.
I mean, I'll add more symbolism. Like that horse, why did the horse get hurt? Like it was a hole that they didn't see, right? Like it's in this fight that they're having with this land, with the ranch and all these things, market equity. Like there's so many potholes, there's so many holes that you have to see that Rip has to learn to be prepared for. Like you're stepping into this role. You have to see that hole before Carter sees that hole, before the next person sees the hole. Otherwise, somebody could die, or something could die, right? Like it's just demonstrating like the levity of the situation. This is not season 1 where we're just looking at, poachers coming in and stealing some cattle here and there. And no, man, we're dealing with potentially the end of this dynasty, and this is a dynasty. And Rip, like that's a lot of weight for somebody, again, who no formal training, no education, none of these things, not even officially in the family, even though he is like, well, but not officially a son, outside of being a son-in-law, even though he has all of the other like benefits and stuff that comes with being part of the Dutton family, whatever. So yeah, like that's just more symbolism added to it.
Also, what is Rip without the ranch? Like if they lose the land and if they lose the ranch, not only does he lose his job and like his place where he lives, but also after he just like everything that happened with his parents, like he has no identity, right? Like he doesn't have an ID, he doesn't have a driver's license, he doesn't have an identity. What happens to Rip if that happens? How does he move on with his life? So I think it's just kind of a struggle, not only of like who am I without this ranch, but also like what am I going to do without without the ranch?
Absolutely. Great points. Another character we want to talk about we haven't touched on yet is Casey Dutton. So in episode 1, we see Casey as a popo on horseback with his crew, trying to retrieve some stolen horses on the Montana side of the border. Some poachers came on the land and trying to get to the Canadian side. That was very interesting to me as well, because Casey is one of those characters that's still very mysterious to me. Like there's a chunk of his childhood that we just don't know about, right? And when the series starts, he's at odds with John. He has no parts. He wants no parts with John. We find out that John did not want him and Monica to get married. You know, Monica got pregnant young. And that was a huge issue for Casey. And now, fast forward 4 or 5 seasons now, him and John are, for that relationship, is probably the best it could be right now. I mean, they're close. He's now deputy marshal of the cattle, whatever. But he gets a call from his wife, Monica, and she's going to labor 3 weeks early. And he rushes home, or he was supposed to rush home, but Monica couldn't wait. What were your thoughts about that scene of Monica and Tate in the car? And Tristan, I'll start with you.
Really gripping scene. You definitely feel like the tension. Like, hey man, are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? Even though you know that there's no way that she was going to make it. Really sad scene. Like, I'm glad they didn't like fully show like the crash, but just thinking about that scene, it's like the first thing I was thinking about while watching it, like I really wish we got more Casey in these first couple episodes. Casey being my favorite character, but it's just like another. It's another like obstacle for that particular couple, you know, with everything else that's going on. Like, so much stuff is threatening to pull them apart. You know, there's Tate being kidnapped. There's, you know, the attacks on the ranch. There's on a much smaller note, there's the other woman that was kind of flirting with my boy. Like, there's so much stuff that's just threatening to pull them apart. And I just wonder how much losing this child is going to have on that relationship, which has endured so much, that either it's going to make them remarkably stronger or it's going to, you know, finish the job.
My thoughts were, was there no contingency plan? Like, I go into labor while Casey's not here. What do? I just drive myself to the hospital. So that to me was just kind of like, okay, like that was the plan. If Casey's not here, I jump in the car, even if I, you know, I'm in so much pain that I can't drive. But I think just the buildup to a crash was like the worst part, right? Because we see her like be in such pain and she's swerving in the car, and Tate is all scared as well. And then we see the other driver, he's just kind of distracted, and we see the little the footprints of that buffalo going onto the road. So we know it's going to happen. We know it's not going to end well. But I think that made it worse. And then I'm also interested to see what the repercussions from the crash are, not only for Casey and for Monica and for their family, but for the family of that other driver. Do we know if he made it or not? I think I missed that part, but also like, is the family going to come back and want to sue? So I'm wanting to see like more of that, like more of the fallout of the crash, not only for the Duttons, but you know, just to see what happens.
This family is way too fucking important for like nobody to be able to drive. They have a fucking helicopter. What are we doing? Like, why are we doing this primitive driving with the I guess 17-year-old Tate Dutton? Like, what the like Tate can't drive? Like, come on, man.
Or you know, like have somebody come over and be like, hey, I'm in labor, can you come over? Like, people have been having babies on the land for centuries and centuries. Like, was there nobody else she could have called and said like, hey, come help me out a little bit?
That was very, look, I love Taylor Sheridan. I think he's doing a great job with all the shows, 1883 in this show. That was very poor writing. I didn't get that. Like, this is the second Dutton child that's gonna bring, like, this show is about legacy and family and who's gonna carry the torch when the head guy is gone. You have a child, the second Dutton child in the family, because Beth can't have kids. That's about to be, you know, brought to this world, and you don't have provisions put in place. Like, that made no sense to me at all. Like you said, you have a helicopter, you're worth millions of dollars, you're governor. I mean, you're deputy of the cattle administration, whatever. You can't have a maid or an au pair, somebody there to like watch over her. And then not only that, you put Tate's life in danger. That was very weird to me. I didn't understand the writing of that scene. But towards the end of episode 1, we find out that Monica's rushed to the hospital, and not only that, the baby's lost, but Tate tells John that the baby was named after John. And that's how the episode ends. But of episode 1. Tell me your thoughts about Tate breaking down the news to John that the baby was named after him.
That was really sad. I think again, like you said, the legacy and who's going to carry this on. Like the child was a boy and his name was John. So I think that kind of maybe upset John a little bit more too. But it's interesting that you brought up like maybe like that wasn't such great writing. I read this article not too long ago, maybe a couple days ago, about how like Monica as a character gets so much hate. And this writer was saying like maybe it's not a Monica problem, it's a Taylor Sheridan problem that he's just writing all of these bad things to happen for Monica, and she always has to wallow in all the bad things. Whereas Beth, like, she kicks ass after bad things happen, and Monica's always just kind of wallowing, and people just are like, "Ah, she's just so annoying. She's just so annoying." And it's like she's gone through a lot of trauma. Like she is reacting in a normal way that people going through this trauma would react. So it was just very interesting that Monica gets so much hate. And it could just be due to bad writing for her character. But I do think it was just really sad, that whole scene between Tate and John. And then also when Tate is talking to Casey and he's like, I really want you to try again because I really liked having a sibling. I thought that was just, that pulled at my heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, like finding out that the baby was going to be named John. I think for John, it kind of reaffirms the growth in he and Casey's relationship. I don't think Casey would have named his son John, in season 1, season 2. I think Casey is starting to understand why John is so rigid about, this legacy and stuff like that, and making sure there's somebody to carry that on. And I think he's been kind of ripping between the Dutton family, his father, and like the family he's built for himself. And he's been trying to straddle that fence between both of those two entities. And it was just a sign of like really good faith. Like, hey, I'm here, even though I had to move my family back here, just kind of get away from the pressures and just like relentless conflict involving his ranch. I'm still a Dutton and I'm still devoted to you. It's just interesting to see what does John do with that? Like, how does he cultivate this relationship with Casey into a more productive, healthy father-son relationship, and not just basically a Dawn and Copper relationship that he's had with Casey over the course of these few seasons.
Jose makes a great point. One of the comments he made is, I thought, in speaking about John and Monica's characters, I thought that was meant to highlight the power disparity because she is Native and comes from a lower socioeconomic status as Duttons, so her problems and Casey problems are felt graver. I somewhat agree with that. I just think after about 4 seasons and some change of Monica's character arc, we should get a little bit more, because Monica is not only the wife of Casey Dutton, but she's also the mother of the future in Tate. And Tate's gonna play I think Tate's gonna play a major role in the future of this show and in the positioning of John's land and his ranch, because Tate is part Native American as well. So I would love to see more of an empathetic route with Monica this season. I mean, especially losing a child, like that's. Yeah. When a mother loses a child, man, that changes the path, the mental states of any woman. So
to Josue's point, Monica has rejected so many of the spoils that comes from there being a Dutton family because of the conflict between this white family and her native roots. Like, I don't have the cognitive dissonance on rooting for John Dutton, but Monica does. Like I told you, man, I like gangsters. You know what I'm saying? And John Dutton is a gangster. But Monica, she lives through like the weight of like the history of her culture and all these things. And she's not, again, remember, she was teaching these things. Like she's a scholar of she's not just Native American. She's a scholar of Native American history. She's so deep rooted in her culture that she wants to be as far away from that as possible. Like I think she understands uh, the dissonance that Casey feels in trying to serve basically two masters, you know, her and his father. But for her, like the only way she can truly be her is to be like so rooted in that Native American culture, and she has to be around her people. I don't know where the hell her people were like during this time, but she has to be around them. Like she has to feel that. And I think when she's at the Dutton household, she never felt comfortable there, and she never felt comfortable accepting, like I said, the full benefits of being a Dutton. So I think that is why they don't have like the au pair, they don't have the maids and stuff like that. Is because she just wants to feel as comfortable as possible within her own environment.
And I think too, I think it's also the rejection. We found out in season 1 that John admits to her that he never wanted the marriage to happen between her and Casey, and he wanted an abortion. He wanted Casey to have an abortion. So I think she still carries that rejection even today, between John and herself, and all the spoils that comes along with being a Dutton, because she's a Dutton by blood now. I mean, her child's a Dutton, so. That's going to be an internal struggle that she's going to have, and she's going to have to find a way to navigate through the past and what's best for her family's future. Another scene I want to pull up in season 2 is John's first day as governor. He walks into the room. He has his assistant read off his day. A meeting with the lines of agriculture, the meeting with the lines of education, and this, that, and the third, and he's already up to here on day 1 of the role of being governor and politicking and making sure to harbor these relationships. And there's a scene where he calls in his chief of staff, the guy that was pretty much presented to him as his chief of staff, and there's a scene where this education alliance, that this bill that he so-called supported, he had no idea that he was even supporting. He gets livid about it, and he fires his chief of staff, makes Beth his chief of staff. Talk about his character arc too. Now as governor, what do you expect? How John's going to navigate through all these different alliances and trying to harbor these relationships with the great people of Montana? Marcy?
I think he's going to have a really difficult time. Again, when he got into the race, he's like, I just want to do it to save my land. This is what I'm doing it for. But then when he's actually in the job, he's like, oh, there's a whole lot of other shit that I didn't anticipate that I had to do. So again, I loved when Linnell was like, listen, if you want to get shit done, you have to learn how to play the game. So I don't know if choosing Beth as the chief of staff was the best choice, again, because she's not like, she can get things done sometime, but she's not a very like compromising person. So it'll be really interesting to see like how she's able to navigate that role and to, just get things to happen.
While I feel like John is going to struggle being like the political nature of it, the manipulating, the scheming and stuff like that, John has a interesting way of bending. I think John will be very successful in bending the governorship to his will. And this is where John Dutton becomes John Dutton. He understands where he cannot win. And he cannot win being Littlefinger, being a schemer and stuff like that. That's not who he is. What he is finding out who he can trust, where his leverage points are. And this, I guess this is part of being, a politician as well. But through sheer will, force of personality, that's John Dutton. I think that's how he gets the government. That's how he becomes successful in his new position. He's going to be uncomfortable as hell. But I think where this season is going is him learning how to use these political connections without fully diving deep into it, but using these political connections to get what he ultimately wants, which is protection for his land and protection for his ranch. I don't know who he may have to kill or not kill to do it. But I think that's how he ultimately wins, is just force of personality.
Yeah, I agree. I think if John can give up a little bit of his ego, I think it would be wise for him to listen to Linnell. Linnell has a wealth full of politician experience, especially being the Senate of this state. Like if John is wise, he's gonna have to listen to her, because she throughout episode 1 and 2, she keeps relaying the message like, look, this is not about just the ranch. You're gonna have to harbor these relationships in order to get stuff passed and get stuff, canceled, or get stuff put on your docket and get approved. And I think John is not as focused as John is. I think sometimes his focus can take him off the focal path of what he needs to do, if that makes sense. And I think that scene was very important too, because all these alliance meetings are for the greater good, to make sure that there's power, there's strength in numbers. And when you're governing, when you have all these alliances, people who support you and support your platform. I mean, we saw in real life with Trump. Like, Trump spoke to a group of people that were viewed as uneducated and viewed as misinformed, and he created a power through that voice. And I think John at a smaller state level needs to use the people from all these alliances, from the agriculture side to the the deputy side, and get these people on the side to finally push what he needs to push. Last but not least, I want to talk about this last scene as well. There was a flashback with John. Young John, probably his mid-30s, with on his land, this EPA spray that was going on was EPA approved by some I don't know, maybe some government workers or whatever. It was killing off the fish in the water, and it was killing off some of the calves as well. I want to ask you guys, what did that scene mean to you in the grand scheme of things? Because it seemed like that flashback was kind of random. What did you guys think, Tristan?
First, shout out to my girl Rachel Carlson. Just taught my kids that. So while watching that scene, I felt like, I don't know if it is symbolism of something we've already seen, or is it indicative of what we're going to see? Like, maybe that could be a tactic for market equities. Like, hey, we just poison a bunch of the stuff. Like, shit is about to, like, you talk, like Carolyn, whatever face, was like, hey, the gloves are going to come off. Like, this is going to get really dirty, like, really fast. So maybe this is foreshadowing some tactics used to cripple the ranch. I didn't really know what to make of that per se. God damn, Taylor Rooks is fine. But like you said, that was a really random. That was a random flashback.
Love TNT basketball, man. Focus on this show.
Well, it's football. It's on Prime, man. I do think we'll see more. That was a flashback where I'm like, hey, we're going to see much more flashbacks that are just like this, because it's setting up something that's going to happen. So that's a wait and see flashback.
Absolutely, Marcy.
I had forgotten about that scene until you brought it up, and it was very savage, and it showed like what he is willing to do to protect his land, right, and to protect his animals that were being harmed by this chemical. So it kind of just shows what he's willing to do and how far he will go to kind of protect what he feels is important. But it all will also maybe signify how he might do well to team up with some of these environmentalists that are seen as kind of like radicals, in order to help save Montana and just kind of help prevent some of this other progress that's coming in. So maybe that's also just something that's being foreshadowed, right? Making some alliances with groups that maybe would seem like unlikely, just political friends, but maybe you can come together to kind of get what you want.
And piggyback off that, like, there's been so many mentions of like this rift between environmentalists and, I guess, conservative people, I guess, that I guess that it can only lead to that, like, this unnatural alliance between these two factions. Like, he's governor now. He can break old girl out. Like he can commute a sentence like with the snap of a finger. So, you can kind of see like he was starting to not starting to, like, he had sex, but like ideologically he was softening towards I don't want to call her old girl. What's the girl who got the 14-year sentence?
Summer.
Yeah. So
like they were, talking about like the difference with their ideological differences in the way that things should go environmentally. And while John was never going to be like, I'm a liberal now when it comes to the environment, he was starting to see her point of view, at least to see her perspective and see the validity in it, even though, he's just absolutely opposed to it based on who he is and what he does. So I think that is an unnatural alliance that's coming toward during the season. So excellent point.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, about how that could be an alliance for the future. Once, especially, I mean, with Summer, it seemed like Summer had a voice as well, a platform in Bozeman right before she got arrested. So I can see John breaking her out and creating that ears on the ground and creating that alliance for sure. So those are the first 2 episodes of Yellowstone. I can't wait to see what's going to happen this season. Tristan and Marcy, thank y'all so much for coming on the show. We're going to try to do this weekly as well. I know everybody's schedule is crazy, but we're going to set it up and make sure that we can at least talk about this on a weekly basis.
So people, how they can find us, man? How can we go?
Man, so follow us on social media, man. Watchers in the Basement. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Watchers in the Basement.
MySpace.
Subscribe. Yeah, please subscribe, man. We're also on Apple as well. So subscribe, like us, comments, tell us your thoughts. Not about Yellowstone, man. Talk about any shows that we've done in the past, or shows that you want us to talk about, or movies you want us to talk about, man. Please leave a comment, man. So for myself, for Tristan, for Marcy, thank you so much, and we are out.
For the watch.